Hello, good morning, and welcome to the third series in our Crisis Coach 2018 webinar series for those associated with the University of Alabama, whether you be students, alumni, employees, educators, or were invited via one of our invitations. We want to thank you so much for joining today and taking time from your day for crisis communications, trust, and resiliency brand attributes. Before we get started today, I would like to forward the slide, and I'd like to invite you to connect with us at Firestorm. We are Firestorm Soul on Twitter, Firestorm Solutions on Facebook. You can find us as continuity experts on our YouTube channel, and we are Firestorm Solutions on LinkedIn. Anytime you'd like to connect with us after a webinar, during, before, you can use the hashtag CrisisCoach, and we'll see that and respond to you as quickly as possible. And we always appreciate the collaboration and engagement on social media. If you have a question today during this session, you can use the GoToWebinar dashboard. It's probably on the right-hand side of your screen. You can open the little dashboard, and there is a chat area, and you can ask a question by raising your hand, or you can use the chat feature. And we are supported today on this call by Bill Baker, our VP of Operations in our Atlanta office. And Bill will let me know if there's someone who has a question. If we're not able to get to it by the end of today's session, however, we will be happy to email you and reach out post-session. If you'll also look under the word handout in the GoToWebinar dashboard section, there is a handout for today's session for post-session. It is an infographic related to crisis communications, and you can share that electronically with your teams and talk a little bit about what we talk about today so that we can help you move your program forward in 2018. As always, our attorneys would like us to let you know that this exercise is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussions. Any work product provided by Firestorm should be read in conjunction with all guidance given by national, regional, and local authorities, as well as your organization's personal counsel. Moreover, the information given and comments made in this webinar should not be interpreted as legal advice or legal opinion. I know some of you on this call could recite that without looking at the screen because you've been with us for 4 years, and we appreciate it. And we look forward to a long history in the future. History in the future? Okay. Firestorm Services, you know us. We have expanded this year into 2018. We're very excited about that. Not only have we expanded some of the services we offer so that we have an integrated book of crisis and risk solutions for you, or anything related to the crisis and risk area. We've expanded our own management team. You'll be meeting Jody Bell, who is our VP of Business Development soon. We're very excited about that. And of course, Jason Russell, our Chief Security Officer, and Cheyenne Marling, who is the head of our People and Analytical Solutions, plus many others on their teams. So we have crisis and risk solutions. We have people solutions that help you identify top talent, or if you're someone who is looking for something new in the business continuity or risk and crisis management field, we can certainly assist you in that. We have security solutions that include assessments, our behavioral risk threat assessment program, active shooter training, certification, everything from the ground up, starting with the architect and secure design from the foundation to the completion of the project. Our professional services solutions include assessments, plans, training people, and conducting exercises. Our intelligence solutions include using technology to understand risks, identify those risks, threats, and vulnerabilities and behaviors of concern so that we can stop that gun or that weapon from coming into the building. and analytical solutions, which include diagnostic tools, benchmarking, metrics, data, and analysis. So we have a fully integrated solution for you, and we're looking forward to introducing you to all of the key leadership in our organization over the coming year. I want to especially thank our partner in this session, the University of Alabama Bama at Work program. The beautiful Brenda Truelove, who normally would speak at this point in time, is out of the country. And so I'm going to just talk a little bit about the collaboration that Firestorm and the University of Alabama have been involved with over the past few years that has resulted in a terrific program for both schools and businesses that leverages our behavioral risk threat assessment program and the University of Alabama's learning management system to provide you and your teams access to the training and learning that you need in order to move your program forward. This program empowers schools and businesses to identify, assess, manage, and monitor those in your organizations who may exhibit behaviors of concern long before they pose a threat of violence. And the reason this is an important approach is because we not only need to be aware of behaviors that we may be seeing in an individual, but we have to have an intelligence network in place, and that intelligence network allows us to gather information and data from multiple sources. So coworkers are part of that intelligence network. Social media, public social media, not private, is part of that intelligence network. Other types of communication are part of that intelligence network. And number 3 is the really important part of that. Everything gets held in a central repository. Because if you have someone in your organization who observes the behavior of concern, and someone else in the organization who observes the behavior of concern, and those two people never speak, never share that data, or don't know where to share that data, so it's in a centralized location, how do we ever get to put the pieces of the puzzle together? So the central repository is a key important factor in the behavioral risk threat assessment program. And then from there, we move through the process. And the training is provided by highly skilled architects of the behavioral risk threat assessment program, including Brenda Truelove, who is depicted here with our CEO, Jim Satterfield. And so they put a lot of time and work into creating some of these, all of these materials, 6 years in the making for Firestorm. And so we do hope that you're able to explore the program, and if you have any questions about it whatsoever, please don't hesitate to reach out to info@firestorm.com, or you can reach me personally at webinars@firestorm.com, and my personal email will be at the end of this session, and we'll direct you to the right person to help you move your program forward for behavioral risk threat assessment. You can also reach out to Brenda Truelove for license information. She will not be back in her office for about a week or so, but do ask her how Italy was when she gets back. I am Karen Masullo, and I am the Chief Intelligence Officer and EVP for Firestorm. And I want to talk today to follow up from our sessions 1 and 2, or from earlier this year. In session 2, we did a mini scenario, and we presented a situation where we had a challenging situation, and it unfolded in about 20 minutes during the webinar. And from there, we're going to take it today to the communication section of that same crisis. So we're going to put ourselves back into that crisis situation and now think about, now that I have some facts, how am I going to communicate? What we want to make sure we understand about a crisis is crises are viewed as singularities, as they happen, but they happen to other people, not to us. That's never going to happen in our organization. It's a black swan. It's an outlier. I don't have to worry about it. This morning, another package was investigated at a FedEx in Austin. 2 minutes before I started this call, there were reports that there was a second investigation at a FedEx package, and there was a school shooting in Maryland. Events are unfolding in a very different way in our country, in our world right now, and there is no such thing as a singularity. So we need to be prepared. We need to keep those that are under our care safe, and by keeping people safe, by making that part of our mission, it is a brand attribute, because preparedness and resiliency are indeed brand attributes. So let's be sincere in what we're doing, and let's talk about how we really can move forward in creating safe environments and communicating effectively to keep people more safe. More safe, safer. So what we know, we're going to start with that. We know that caring and acting upon initiatives that are focused on the health and safety of everyone in your organization. And remember, that includes vendors, customers who may be visiting, other visitors on your property or in your building. This demonstrates a sincerity of purpose, and it is reflected across your organization's brand. So we need to make sure that we're building in this dedication to preparedness from the first day a new employee joins us. Why? This is an image that was taken on the ground at Virginia Tech when we were responding to the shootings, the first shootings at Virginia Tech. And this is just a small visual of some of the media outlets and trucks that were on site with their satellites. So in a crisis situation, a significant crisis situation, you can expect this outside of the boundaries of your building. If you are a public entity, a school, etc. If you are a corporate park or something like that, your employees are going to be approached as soon as they leave the building, and they're going to be approached multiple times. Are you ready for that? Are you prepared for that? Do you understand what that looks like and what that can mean? So if you have a mature program, a mature crisis communications program, you've probably considered this. You may have discussed it with your employees, and you may have a plan for what happens in case of some sort of a crisis. Your program will have assigned roles and responsibilities. You'll have home bases, you'll have message maps, and you'll actually have a developed catalog of communication. Culturally, the entire organization will understand that there is a need to communicate in a disciplined fashion. And then we need to discuss transparency and what that means to your organization. Is it a core brand value? A couple of years ago, I spent a good deal of time on our webinars discussing the situation in West Virginia where a water system for more than 400,000 people was corrupted by a leak at a chemical facility. And the spokesperson for the chemical facility had just gotten off a plane from the UK because he had accepted the presidency 2 days before from a merger. He'd been on a plane, he was coming into West Virginia anyway, and the crisis happened. So he had had very little sleep, and he had just moved his family into a new home in this West Virginia area about a month before. His wife had been there setting things up, and he showed up on camera for a press conference, tired, disheveled, disorganized with his thought process because he had just come from a relatively long trip. And he was trying to get up to speed, and he didn't have all of the facts. And at one point in time in the conversation, he was holding a bottle of water in his hand when other people in this little town, in this area, couldn't get water at all. That was the number one optic that was not the best optic for him. But at one point, he did decide he was done with the press conference, and he went to walk away. And a reporter can be heard off camera saying, hey, 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 we're not done with you yet. And he turned around and came back to the mic. We don't want that to happen. We don't want us to represent our company, by the way, that one of which doesn't exist anymore, in a way that shows carelessness and disregard for basic human life. And so we're going to talk about how we create a mature program by looking at the different levels in the Firestorm maturity model. And we're going to map where you believe you are today. And our goal is going to be to move you forward into the next block from where you are today into a more mature area. We'd like to help you do that throughout the rest of the year. So we're going to look at each section and decide where you are and then apply it to the scenario that we worked through last month. Many companies find themselves in this stage, no matter how old your company is. If crisis communication or communication in general has not been a priority, you're going to find yourself in this really the most immature stage. And that is where everything that happens in your organization is a surprise. Your processes are developed only as a reaction to the situation. And there's a lot of debate on what is the best process, who owns it, who's in charge. And if there is expertise, the expertise is called in late. And I say if, because most likely you're so busy debating on process, you forget to call in the experts. I want to stop here and just say as a benefit of being on this webinar today and being associated with the University of Alabama, the University of Alabama underwrites a program for you. Every single one of you on this call now has access to our Crisis Stop program. If you find you are in a crisis, you are to stop what you are doing. If you're in the stage 1 area, I want everybody to stop in the room, in the conference room. You be the voice of reason and say, we're calling Firestorm, because they're going to talk to us for an hour and they're not going to charge us. And we're going to be able to get ourselves back on track. So just implement the Crisis Stop program and you'll already be a more mature program. Next, there are going to be high levels of confusion in the organization because they're going to be changing assignments. People are moving back and forth. You've got 2 people doing the same thing, and some people aren't doing anything at all that needs to be done. So some areas that need to be addressed are going to be overlooked. Decision processes aren't clear because tasks and responsibilities aren't clear. And if people don't know what is expected of them, how can you expect them to perform? Roles and responsibilities must be clearly defined, and information must be clear. When we talk about information, we know that almost everything you learn about a crisis or an event going on is wrong, that you learn about in the first hour or so is wrong. There's supposition, there are rumors, there are facts that are not verified. Somebody saw something, but somebody saw something else. Trained police folks know this, but we can't expect everyone in our organizations to have that level of detail orientation when relating the data related to a crisis or event. So we have to have good data in place somewhere. In this stage, you don't. You don't know where to go for information. So let's say something has happened at your manufacturing facility in New Jersey. You don't know how to get in touch with anyone in New Jersey. The communication channels aren't set up. They don't know how to get in touch with you. You have no clue what's going on, and you have customers calling you and saying, hey, I read about what just happened at your New Jersey facility. What are you doing about it? And you don't even know. So you need to have the ability to produce swift responses based upon reliable, accurate data. And that then lends to the speed of decision making. In the stage one, in the most immature area of communication, everything is slowed. You're walking in molasses. You can't make decisions. The events that are happening outpace your leadership, and everything is a blind side. There's serious confusion, and the executive team is overwhelmed, which makes decision-making even more challenging. This is someone who just got off a plane with no sleep, no information, no data, standing in front of cameras, being blindsided by information he or she was not, of which they were not aware. Terrible position to be in. And because of that, the communication coming out from your organization is highly reactive, key channels are missed, and the messages are simply not timely. You're delivering information after CNN and Fox already did. You need to be leading the conversation, not following it. And you know, today more than ever, we have the ability to do that, right? Used to be the only way we could communicate with people was if we got ourselves on television or spoke through major print publications. But today, we have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Quora, LinkedIn. We have Facebook Live. We have all kinds of self-broadcasting tools via YouTube and Vimeo. And we have more ways than ever, even email, to get in touch with the people who we need to get in touch with, our customers, our vendors, our employees, our employee families, our community, our board, our partners, our divisions. We know who those people are, and we know how to get in touch with them immediately. So we need to have that prepared and ready to go. Which leads us to the second stage, which is a pretty basic communication stage. And I think if you all look at yourself objectively, well, I would love you to be in the most mature stage, I think we'll find a lot of us sit right here, where we have a general process. It's generic. It's not custom for our organization, but we have a process. And decision rights aren't completely clear. I mean, we know we need to do such and such. We need to get a press release out, or we need to communicate via Twitter. We're just not really quite clear how that happens. We know it has to happen, just don't know exactly how, but we can figure it out. So there's going to be some degree of confusion and a little slowing down of the process. We do know that the crisis communications team is in charge of doing those messages, but they're not really clear on what messages they're supposed to get out, and nobody's really clear on when to call them in, and are they at the table, and really who leads that team. So we need a little more clarification there. And that team needs some resources to get the messaging out if we're going to do messaging at all. The crisis communications team might decide that messaging is not appropriate right now, but they need resources. They need to bring in some experts. They need to do some other things that require additional resources, but nobody defined that. So there's no authorization. So that's going to really slow the process down. But even though they need resources and those resources aren't defined, they at least know what the basic issues are. And so when it comes to gathering information, they can get some basic data from some different divisions within the company upon which to make decisions. Now, it's a little bit delayed, and the information is not precise. When they say, did you verify this data to people giving it, the people say, well, no, but it's pretty close. So then we have to make a decision. Do we use this data upon which to make our next decision, or do we wait till we have real data? So that slows things down, right? And so there's a lack of timely decision making. Again, we're just reacting to events as they happen. We're not really thinking about what could happen. We're just reacting. And we're spending a lot of money to do it. It's really resource intensive. We're not sure what our insurance policy covers. Somebody's calling them. I don't know. Is the CEO calling them? Or maybe the risk officer's calling them. I don't really know. What should we do? Should we wait? Yeah, let's wait. And then once it comes to actually communicating, we have a somewhat established process. And most of the major channels we think we've got covered. But the messaging is highly reactive. As we're kind of getting fed new data, we're trying to push out messages. We're trying to keep people safe. We're scared. Depending on the situation, it can get very, very confusing. You know, during Hurricane Sandy, Con Ed in New York did an incredibly stellar job of performing in a crisis via social media. They designated one team for triage. They said, you're going to be the team that when you spot someone in trouble, water's up to their knees, their power's out, they need to be rescued, you guys are going to handle that. And here are your communication connections at the different borough first responder community, and they let those people go off and figure that out. Then they had another group of people, and they said, you are solely in charge of getting helpful messaging out through the media. So when we see false information on Twitter that says the New York Stock Exchange has flooded, you're going to correct that information. And they did this with about 6 groups, and it was really a beautiful thing to watch. They didn't have a lot of people. They just had a very clear path to communication, and they saved lives. And that brings us to this third stage. It's supportive. It's been thought out previously, and it is about pre-action. It is a defined process with defined decision rights and little debate. We don't have people arguing back and forth because we've clarified everything. The roles and responsibilities are aligned with the business and technology processes and event types, and we have defined what resources we're going to need to move these events forward. Information is clear. We know basically what data we're going to need to make decisions in this specific crisis. So somebody sat down around a table, and you can do this in your own organization, do it once a month, and by the end of the year you'll have moved your program forward that much more. Once a month, take an event. If you live on the East Coast, say, okay, let's plan for a hurricane. If you live in the middle of the country, plan for what your weather event may be, whether it be a tornado or a flood. Then let's take outside of a weather event, right? We know basically what to do in weather events. There's a lot of information out there, plus we get a lot of notice because meteorology has come so far, and there are lots and lots of resources that help us keep our employees and those in our care safe during a natural disaster. But let's talk about some outcroppings of that natural disaster. What happens when all our IT processes go down? How do we live without technology? What's our backup plan for that? Firestorm worked with an organization a few years ago where our CEO asked the board what would happen if they lost all of their servers. Server farms gone, backups are gone. How long is it going to take you to get back up again? And the board said, well, we anticipate it would probably take, 4 to 5 days to start getting things back again. And we then went to the senior leadership team. Senior leadership team said, well, probably about 10 days. We then went to the middle management team, and the middle management team said, well, at least a month. We went to IT, and IT said maybe we could be at 20% within 6 months. 18 months to really be fully recovered. That's a big disparate view of what it takes to be ready and prepared. And that's the kind of conversation we want to have today before the event occurs, so that we can get data and information when we need it and it's accurate. And it allows you to be a swift organization so that you can make good, timely decisions. You can respond adequately with the right resources to events and have an efficient process. If there was a flood today in your region, your building, and you were one of the few locations that did not flood, but the flooding was really bad, like Houston experienced, and no one could get anywhere, and you had 80 people in your building, your manufacturing facility or an office building, and those people were going to be there for a week, would you be able to feed them? Would you be able to help them keep clean and safe? If someone were injured, would you be able to respond to that? And then when you make decisions in the supportive stage, we want to make timely decisions and communicate internally and externally via defined processes and channels with effective and timely messages pre-developed, and some of that messaging standardized. What does that mean? No situation is going to unfold exactly the way we practice it, but at least we've practiced it, right? We know that something's going to occur and we're going to need to get some information out. We're going to need to tell people to shelter in place. We're going to need to tell people we've locked down or locked out. So we should have messages pre-prepared for some of that information, and then modify it based upon the actual situation, which ultimately will save time and allow us to get information out in a way that's accurate and fast. This is what we're all shooting toward, okay? We all want to be at this stage 4 where we just have a culture of strategic communication. It is in the DNA of our organization. And that's where we have a clear playbook for major crisis types and clear and known decision rights. Firestorm produces these playbooks, and they're works of art because it's a custom playbook for every organization, and these take time to develop. But once you've done the work, you are able to move everything forward in your organization in a much more mature way because you've done the work ahead of time. The roles and responsibilities are clearly defined, and the responsibilities are predefined by event type. You've got all your support resources defined, and people are not only have defined these things, but they've trained on it. So not only are you doing tabletop exercises, but you're doing other types of exercises. You're training on communication processes, and you're identifying your weaknesses and your strengths and realigning people as needed to meet the need. And so information coming out is clear, it's fast, it's accurate, and it allows you to lead instead of follow in your own crisis. The decisions being made by everyone in the organization at every level are timely, efficient, and you're able to anticipate what could happen. Instead of just saying, oh, because it rained really hard, the roof could fall in, you're suddenly looking at 5 or 6 different scenarios that could happen and planning for all of those. Instead of just one linear path, we're able to see in a much fuller, with a much fuller point of view, and plan for those contingency experiences as well. And your communication effectiveness is as mature as we can be in that You have a proven messaging process with predefined messages for the major event type. Your messaging content is standardized and then refined as appropriate. And it's standardized for the medium. So your Facebook audience is different from your LinkedIn audience, is different from your Twitter audience. Some messages will be exactly the same, and some will be modified based on those audiences. Your internal email communications are different from your external email communications, although please recognize that anything you send internally will be shared publicly. Now that you look at this, where are you in your particular level of maturity in communication? Everything a surprise? Is everything reactive? Are you supportive? Or do you have a strategic culture of sophisticated communication? When you're developing these programs and plans and processes, remember that anymore, newspapers are there to sell ads. They need advertising, and if it bleeds, it leads. So we don't need to worry about that. And TV news broadcast news has really become entertainment. Time is sold by creating controversy. Everything is a soundbite. A soundbite out of context, if it sells advertising, is a soundbite that's going to be used. And social media has to be carefully managed. There was a period of time in social media where everybody said, we'll get an intern to do that. The last thing you want, speaking as the public voice of your organization, is an intern who doesn't know your organization. This is a job and a role for someone with a great deal of maturity, because social media can destroy, actually it's 280 characters now, that which took you 150 years to build. You must also establish, what is your house brand? Do you know how your organization controls its message and reputation? Do you know what the goal of your communication process is? And who developed the look and feel of your communication? Was it an outside firm? Has it changed? How do you unify the look and the feel of messaging across a large organization with multiple offices in multiple countries and divisions? A while back, I did an exercise in a company I used to work for, where I went to 9 key offices around the country. We had 81 total offices, and I went to 9. And I said, just give me our mission statement. What's our mission statement? A couple of people said, wait, I need to look it up on the website. And the rest of the people gave me what they thought our mission statement was, and not one person said the same thing. You must make sure everyone in your organization understands your mission, your philosophy, and your strategy, especially with regard to risk. What is your communication policy? I was doing a significant downsizing of an employee at a very large manufacturing facility in the Midwest. And it was a big deal in this little town because they were losing a major employer. And as soon as people left the transition meetings inside the organization, cameras were being shoved in their faces and they were being asked for comment. And comment they did. So we had people who had just lost their jobs being the voice of the organization. They were the key communication funnel. What could that company have done to change that, to avoid that? And then we have to analyze why we're communicating. We communicate for 4 key reasons: to build, maintain, or restore trust, to improve knowledge and understanding of a situation or a subject, to guide and encourage attitudes, decisions, action, and behaviors to keep people safe, and to encourage collaboration and cooperation, especially in a crisis. Start with these 4 key spots and ask your teams, why are we communicating? Go to your newest hire in the organization and ask that new hire, what's our mission statement And why do you think we communicate? And then define what transparency means to your organization. Is transparency a core value of your organization, or is it an unfortunate side effect? Depending on the kind of organization you have, from a hospital to a financial institution to a government entity, your answer is going to be very different. And your people internally have to be trained on what it means to your organization. Last week we looked at a case study, and as we near the end of our time together today, what I'd like you to do for next month is to revisit this exercise. In this exercise, we said that someone used the Me Too hashtag, which meant that they had been sexually harassed or abused, and said, by my manager at the company. And they used your company's name. It quickly unraveled. It got out of control. You had customers see it. Your human resource director saw it. The person managing your Facebook account managed it poorly, escalated the situation, and someone was alerting the media to every internal and external communication about it. And we lost control. We didn't know how we were getting information, and we weren't clear on how we were going to communicate, and it all evolved over a period of 20 minutes. So now let's look at that exercise and say, how will we communicate? What are the message maps we would have created after the fact to support us before? Let's sit down and determine, based on this scenario, why we're going to communicate. We're going to ask ourselves why we're going to communicate 5 times. And if we can't come up with a good reason to communicate out, we're not going to. We're going to identify what we want each target audience to know if we are going to communicate. So maybe we're not going to communicate out publicly via our social media, but we do need to communicate to our board or to our senior leadership. We certainly need to let the CEO know what happened and why. We need to identify what we need to do to correct any bad information out there. Because remember, in our last session, we had someone who just had a bone to pick with the organization, toss their hat in the ring and start another rumor. So now we have a couple things we're dealing with, and we don't want to let our first response become the second crisis. We're going to prepare support messages for each overarching talking point that we create. And if you download that infographic that I showed you under handouts in your GoToWebinar dashboard, it will outline those core messages for you. And we're going to keep those messages clear, simple, and short. And then we're going to decide what medium we're going to deliver those through, and we're going to practice delivering them. Okay, what's next? Download that paper, and you can access any of our other briefs at firestorm.com/brief. And let us help you. If you're in a crisis, use that crisis stop. Just call our 1-800 number. You're going to get to speak to Bill Baker, who's on this call. He's waving at you right now. Say, Bill, I need to enact my crisis stop program, and you'll be connected with a senior principal who can help you stop and figure out what your next best step is. And then please do register for next month's session. Next month's session is the first of 2 parts. And it is where we're really going to dig into how in our organizations we identify behaviors of concern before violence occurs and what we do with that information. This is the infographic that you can download and share within your organization. And I want to thank the University of Alabama and the Bama at Work program. If you would like a document like this or a session like this, please contact us at webinars@firestorm.com, or you can contact me personally at Masullo@firestorm.com. There's our 1-800 number, and that will end our session for today. Have a great day, communicate clearly, move your program forward, and we'll talk to you next month when we talk about behaviors of concern. That will end our session for today. Thank you and have a great day.